all of you, and thank you, Dr. Jay, Dr. Unni, and Dr. Manoj for this wonderful opportunity. My topic is a little vast. I'll take 1 minute extra. So I'll be talking about current imaging trends in infectious uveitis. Now, the problem with imaging in uveitis is that one disease can affect many parts of the eye, and we do not have multicentral studies like how you have in diabetic eye disease. So we have a few case reports and small case series to define the characteristic features. So in this talk, I'll be only talking about OCT, OCT angiography, and fundus autofluorescence. So we'll go from cornea to choroid. So there is a lot of interest recently in the morphology of keratic precipitates in defining the type of anterior uveitis. So this is my first case, which is a case of herpes zoster ophthalmicus with anterior uveitis. Now you see a globular KP here, which is characteristic of herpes zoster anterior uveitis. This is my second case of Fuchs uveitis, and you see a hyperreflective KP, which has also been reported in a case study from Singapore in CMV anterior uveitis. There is one case report on scleritis and episcleritis OCT angiography. So you see here there is thickening of the sclera, and there is increased vascularity in the superficial layers compared to the normal fellow eye. Coming to vitreous, there is one feature called enhanced vitreous visualization, EVV, which helps in better visualization of the vitreous, and probably in the future we can have more objective grading of vitritis. This is a case of leptospiral panuveitis. In leptospirosis, you see vitritis with a lot of vitreous membranes. So this is OCT angiography, and you see there is shadowing actually from the vitreous membranes. This is not loss of flow. So OCT angiography should be interpreted with caution. This is another case of endogenous endophthalmitis due to Aspergillus flavus. This is the post-vitrectomy picture, and you see lesion in the outer retina. And now we know that we need to treat this further. So this patient was treated with intravitreal voriconazole till the lesion resolved completely. And you also notice that there is a decrease in thickness of the choroid as the lesion resolves. Coming to features of the retina. So this is a case of primary acquired toxoplasma retinochoroiditis. So in toxoplasma retinochoroiditis, you see a thickened posterior hyaloid with increased reflectivity of all the retinal layers and marked shadowing. And this is as the lesion resolves. Coming to rickettsial retinitis, here there is increased reflectivity of the inner retinal layers with less marked shadowing compared to what we saw in the case of toxoplasma retinochoroiditis. And as the lesion heals, you see there is thinning and atrophy of the involved layers. Now, this feature has also been described in West Nile virus retinitis. And this is my patient, the same patient, where you see there is rarefaction of the superficial capillary plexus and disorganization of the deep plexus with distortion of the avascular zone. This is another case of rickettsial retinitis. And here you see as the lesion heals, there is extensive non-perfusion in the superficial layer and the deorganization of the deep capillary plexus. Coming to cat scratch neuroretinitis, there are not many imaging studies on this disease. There's one case report on cat scratch neuroretinitis where these yellow dots have been localized to the outer plexiform layer, as we see in my case. There's another case report published in the Indian Journal on a presumed chikungunya neuroretinitis, where these hyperreflective dots are seen on the surface of the retina. Coming to retinochoroidal interface or outer retina RP and chorocapillary imaging. Now, as covered by Dr. Anirudh, this is a case of TB serpiginous-like choroiditis. And this is the fundus autofluorescence picture. This is the active edge where you see hyperautofluorescence. In the OCT angiography, you see that the superficial and deep plexus look unremarkable. And if you see, there are islands of chorocapillary perfusion, and there is also flow void. Coming to another case of serpiginous-like choroiditis, you see there is ischemia here. There is flow void, which is also seen on the color-coded B scan. And as the lesion resolves, you see the vascularity increases. Also, if you note in this case, this is a fresh case who patient presented early and he was treated on time. So there is less RPE, less loss of RPE, and therefore the fundus autofluorescence picture is more of a iso autofluorescence than hypoautofluorescence. This is the same patient, other eye. This is another case who presented late, and here you see a lot of large vessels because of atrophy of the choriocapillary layer, and you are actually seeing the choroidal vessels from the satellar layer, and here you also see the thinning. And here there is marked hypoautofluorescence on FAF because of marked loss of RPE. Now, these are two cases who presented at about the same time. We'll be studying the fundus autofluorescence features of autoimmune serpiginous choroiditis versus tubercular multifocal serpiginoid choroiditis. So these are the color and the red-free photographs. Now, as we see with healing, there is hyper autofluorescence with surrounding hypoautofluorescence in both the lesions. This is stippled autofluorescence again, and now this is more of a hypo-autofluorescence. Here also, because the treatment was given in time, the RP loss is less marked, and you see more of a isofluorescence on autofluorescence pictures. Now, comparing the OCT angiography, this is the right and the left eye of the autoimmune serpiginous choroiditis, and there is more uniform reperfusion with healing. And here you see with TB multifocal serpiginous-like choroiditis, you are seeing more of a patchy ischemia, even with healing. Coming to the choroid and inflammatory CNVMs, now this is a hyporeflective lesion, which is a typical feature of a choroidal granuloma, and you can follow this up as the patient is treated. This is a case of, again, toxoplasma retinochoroiditis, and this patient responded to treatment, but after 1 year, he came again with loss of vision, and here you are seeing it looks like a recurrence of retinitis, but when you do an OCT angiography, you see a lesion between the RPE and the outer retina, and there is a neovascular membrane there, and if you pay attention, there is hemorrhage there. So this is a case of inflammatory CNVM post-toxoplasmosis. This is my last case. This is a case of choroidal granuloma of the optic nerve head because of tuberculosis, and this healed well with treatment. This patient came after 2 years just for a routine checkup. He did not have any loss of vision, and again you see a hemorrhage there, and there is neovascularization, and you are seeing this abnormal flow over the RPE. Now with treatment, there is certainly decrease in the flow and no fluid here. So in summary, non-invasive objective studies are important, and multimodal imaging should be used because there are a lot of artifacts in OCT angiography, and it definitely helps in using autofluorescence together. Thank you.